And I, the hunchback, was also there with them. I announced to them, I can bring you to the tree. For the tree has no place whatsoever, for the tree is completely above space. In other words, it transcends worldly space. It has no place whatsoever. And the aspect of the little that holds the much still takes place in space. For although it is a little that holds the much, that is, a little space holding much more than can be put in the space, nevertheless, it still takes place in the space, since, in any case, it still occupies some bit of space. But I, the hunchback, have such a little that holds the much, that it is the absolute edge of the place beyond which there is no space whatsoever. Therefore, I can carry all of you to the tree, which is above space completely. For this hunchback is something like an intermediary, that is, a midpoint between space and transcending space. For he is the ultimate degree of the little holding the much, which is the actual end of space, above which there is no unit of space whatsoever, since from there and above is the aspect of completely beyond space. Therefore, he can take them out of space and bring them above space. Understand this. I took them and carried them to the tree. Hence, I have a testament that I have such an ultimate degree of the little holding the much, and that is why he had the appearance of a hunchback, for he carries on himself so much. Today, I give you this very thing as a gift, that you should be like me. A very great joy took place there, and a very great gladness. 6th day. On the 6th day, they also rejoiced, but they also yearned. How can the one without hands be brought here? Meanwhile, he came in and said, I am here. I have come to you for the wedding. And he too spoke to them as the others, and he fell upon them and kissed them and said to them, You think I am crippled in the hands? I am not at all crippled in the hands. I do truly have power in the hands, only I do not use the power in my hands in this world, for I need the power for something else. And regarding this, I have a testament from the castle of water. Von dem Wasserlichen Schloss. For once I was sitting together with some men, and each one was boasting of his power that he had in his hands. One boasted that he had a strength in his hands, another boasted that he had another strength in his hands, and so each one boasted of the strength that he had in his hands. Namely, one was boasting that he had such power and strength in his hands that when he shoots an arrow, he can pull it back to him again, for he has such power in his hands that although he has already shot the arrow, he can turn it around and tow it back to him again. I asked him, what kind of arrow can you pull back? Because there are 10 kinds of arrows, since there are 10 kinds of poison. For when one wants to shoot an arrow, one smears it with a poison. There are 10 kinds of poison. And when the arrow is smeared with this poison, the arrow injures like this, and when the arrow is smeared with a different poison, it does more damage. And so there are 10 kinds of poison, each one worse than the other, that is more harmful. And this in itself is 10 kinds of arrows. For the arrows are one sort. It is only because of the variety of the poisons that the arrows are smeared with, which are 10 kinds, as mentioned above, that they are all called 10 kinds of arrows. So he asked him, what kind of arrow can you pull back? In addition, he asked him whether only before the arrow has struck someone he can pull it back, or whether even after the arrow has already struck someone, could he also pull it back? Thereupon, the person answered, even after the arrow has already struck someone, I can still pull it back. But still, which sort of arrow can you pull back? He answered, this and this kind I can pull back. I, the one without hands, who was telling all this, called out to him, you cannot heal the queen's daughter. If you can pull back no more than one kind of arrow, you cannot heal the queen's daughter. One was boasting that he has such power in his hands that whoever he receives from, he gives to. In other words, by his very getting something from someone, he gives to that person. Hence, he is a master of charity. I asked him, which kind of charity do you give? For there are 10 kinds of charity. He replied, he gives a tithe. I called out to him, if so, you cannot heal the queen's daughter, for you cannot at all come to her place, because you give only a tithe. For you can enter in no more than one wall in the place where she is dwelling. Therefore, you cannot come to her place. One boasted that he has the following power in his hands, inasmuch as there are officials in the world, in other words, senior men who are given command over a city or country, etc., each one needing wisdom. I have such a power in my hands that with my hands I can give him wisdom by laying my hands on him. I asked him, what kind of wisdom can you give him with your hands? For there are 10 measures of wisdom. He replied, such and such a wisdom I can give. I called out to him, if so, you cannot heal the queen's daughter, for you cannot even know her pulse, because there are 10 varieties of pulses, and you cannot know but one pulse, since you can only give one wisdom with your hands.